Alright guys, WalkingPed93 here, and thanks for tuning in. The gameplay I've got going in the background is some games of Frontlines I played recently, and I'm using the new and improved SMG08. This was the SMG that came with the In the Name of the Tsar DLC, and before its buff it was a slow firing but accurate SMG, but now it's an absolute monster. DICE almost doubled its rate of fire, but kept the spread and recoil to a minimum. They also kept the 80 round magazine, and the cherry on top is it only overheats after 40 or so bullets have been fired. This is easily my favourite weapon in the game right now, and is my #1 go-to if I just want to go full Rambo mode. I'm also playing Frontlines, and this is probably my second favourite mode after Conquest. It was the mode that came with the first DLC, They Should Not Pass, but DICE have been working it into the base game maps too, with Amiens being my favourite. What I like about this mode is the dynamic nature of the fighting. 1 minute you can be attacking, the next you're defending. The small player count also keeps each round pretty tight and focused, but I wouldn't be against future iterations of the mode to feature larger player counts and vehicles but with multiple objectives to make sure the gameplay isn't too flustercucky. So yeah, on to what I really want to talk about, and there's a few things that have been going around in this brain of mine. The first thing I'm going to mull over is of course Battlefield. I've been on the CTE and DICE have added 8 new weapon variants to the game. Scoped versions of the Kakano and the Arisaka, an infantry Ross rifle, and perhaps most interestingly, a scoped, silenced 1917 Enfield. There's also the optical Ruby rolls, the Shogun Slug variant, which is one of my favourites, an experimental machine pistol which fires 2-round bursts and has optical sights, and a scoped 1917 carbine. I'm really glad to see that content for BF1 hasn't dried up, and they're going to keep supporting this game with more content in the coming months. The hype for the next Battlefield game is ramping up a bit, so I'm going to throw my hat into the ring. What I would really like is 1980s Cold War, World War III style Battlefield. Urban maps set around the Berlin Wall, the Kremlin, and Washington DC. Desert maps set in Afghanistan during the Soviet invasion, Panama during the US invasion, and Turning Tides style naval maps set around the Falkland Islands. Other locations could include Tiananmen Square, the jungles of Grenada, and the Gulf. Vehicles could include Huey and Hind gunships, Patton, Chieftain, and T-62 tanks, as well as old school AKs, M16s, and FNFALs. I think 1980s Battlefield would be as much of a breath of fresh air, setting-wise, as BF1 was, as the 1980s isn't really an era that's been fully explored in my opinion. There's a handful of missions in the Black Ops 2 single-player campaign, to give one example, that provide a window into what that setting can do. That's my personal hope, but I think it's far more likely that the next game in the franchise will be a World War II game. This makes a lot of sense, of course, it is the next logical step forward, and there's a ton of assets and weapons like the character models, the rifles and sidearms they can take from BF1 and place into a World War II environment. I wouldn't be too upset if this was the case. I think Battlefield is long overdue a return to the Second World War, but there's a few things I hope they change from BF1. Firstly, for class balance, I think they should reintroduce the Engineer class and give the Medic class the SMGs, so your M1 Thompsons and MP40s, and then give the Engineers the self-loading rifles, such as the M1 Garand, M1 Carbine, and Gewehr 43. This will create more BF4-esque class balance, which I definitely prefer, and I think the majority of Battlefield players do too. You've all played Call of Duty, so I'm sure you all have as much knowledge on World War II weaponry as I do, so I'm sure you all know what to expect from the weapons department. Potential DLCs we could see, I can easily imagine a big 6-map Russian DLC just like in BF1. The biggest battles of all time happened on the Eastern Front of World War II. Stalingrad needs no explanation, over 2 million dead in 5 months of bitter close quarters fighting. The Battle of Kursk is still the biggest tank battle of all time. The Fall of Berlin would be cinematic AF. A big Pacific DLC also seems fairly likely too, with naval battles of course, but as a gameplay twist, I would love to see drivable aircraft carriers thrown into the mix. Ideal locations for maps that could facilitate big naval gameplay could be the Battle of the Coral Sea, which prevented the Japanese forces from invading the Australian mainland. And as for infantry maps, take your pick: Iwo Jima, Guadalcanal, Okinawa, Burma, Hong Kong. Wake Island could also make a return, a Battlefield classic. Even a what if type DLC, with maps in the south of England if the Nazis invaded, the Japanese mainland if the atomic bombs were never dropped, or even the US mainland. There's a lot of potential for good content if the next Battlefield game is set during World War II, which if EA want to move to a games as a service type system, then there would certainly need to be a lot of to keep the game going. In terms of actual gameplay changes, all I want is an actual skill curve to master. Ditch the random spread in favour of damage drop off, and weapons having unique recoil patterns. Okay, I'm done talking about World War II because I could honestly go on for ages, and I might have to make another video explaining what I think World War II Battlefield could be like. What I want to talk about now is Star Wars Battlefront 2 because it's going to have a few changes. Its progression system is being updated as a result of the now infamous backlash against loot boxes being woven into the game's progression system. This is coming straight from the blog post. With this update, progression is now linear. Star cards or any other item impacting gameplay will only be earned through gameplay and not be available for purchase. Instead, you'll earn experience points for the classes, hero characters, and ships you choose to play as in multiplayer. If you earn enough experience points to gain a level for that unit, you'll receive one skill point that can be used to unlock or upgrade the eligible star card you'd like to equip. Sounds almost like a video game, doesn't it? Joking aside, I'm really glad that DICE are making these really big changes to the progression system. The post continues to talk about cosmetics and what's actually purchasable with real money, but the point is that nothing gameplay altering can be purchased with your hard-earned cash, only cosmetic items. There's room in my life for another big multiplayer game, and if Battlefront 2 can show me that it's not the game it used to be, then I'm willing to give it another chance. I think this move sets a larger precedent for microtransactions and in-game purchases in AAA games. It's safe to say that no game is ever going to make the same mistake that Battlefront 2 did with tying loot boxes to the progression. I'm not against buying some sexy skins for my guns or character models. I don't even want to know how much money I've spent on Rainbow Six Siege, for example, but tying them to your progression system is just a big no-no. This has consequences for the next Battlefield game too, as it's safe to assume it won't have intrusive loot boxes to the same degree. So that is the end of the video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, you know what to do. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to help me grow the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.